Thank you for joining me for this important message. We can tell from the data that Dr. Levine shared today that we are not yet through this crisis. I know all of you out there are eager to get back to your normal activities, but we must continue to distance ourselves socially to prevent the spread of COVID-19. We've been getting a lot of questions about when we'll be able to transition back to normal life. And the truth is, we still don't know. As Dr. Levine has explained over the past few days, we have seen vastly different models for how this crisis could unfold in Pennsylvania. So much of what lies ahead depends on how successful we are in social distancing. Pennsylvania implemented its social distancing efforts earlier than other places, and I hope that means that we never reach the infection rates that have devastated other places. But we cannot let up on these efforts until we know for sure that this crisis is behind us. Early in our social distancing efforts, we closed schools all across the state. Today, I'm announcing that we will keep school buildings closed while we focus exclusively on distance and remote learning for the remainder of the academic year. This is in line with what other states have done, and it's also in line with Dr. Fauci's prediction that school buildings won't reopen until the fall. Now, this decision only applies to schools. We will continue to assess the situation and reopen businesses and other public facilities as soon as it is safe. We've had to make a lot of tough decisions since the arrival of COVID-19, including this one. Now, I know that schools are not just a place for learning. They're the center of the universe for children. And kids are going to miss their friends and their teachers. They're going to miss activities like soccer and birthday parties. And their energy is not being routed anywhere, so it's going to affect their parents and their caregivers. But we all know how rapidly an illness like this can spread through a school. Reopening a school too soon would jeopardize the lives of everyone in the community. So instead, school leaders and communities have been working together in innovative ways to continue to serve students and families. Immediately after schools were closed, teachers, parents, and community members rallied so students would continue to get meals. Next, schools began rolling out a range of learning opportunities tailored to best fit their students. The Pennsylvania Department of Education has secured resources that is making it easier for schools to provide services even when students can't come to their buildings. These resources include things like online learning platforms that schools can use for many subjects for students in kindergarten through 12th grade. It includes funding to help schools purchase electronic devices to assist students who don't have computers or access to the internet, as well as other educational materials. And it includes a partnership with 7 public television stations to bring educational programs into the homes of Pennsylvanians. Our goal is to provide the best continuity of education under these unprecedented circumstances. And I hope by making the decision to remain closed, we can focus our full attention on serving students instead of planning for constantly changing reopening dates. Schools have already individualized lessons based on the needs of their students, and that's going to continue, which means schooling will look very different from one district to the next. But the Department of Education is going to keep working to ensure that every student gets a good education. I know there will be a lot of questions from parents and students on individual issues. The Department of Education is working with school districts to provide guidance on these unique circumstances. School districts will relay that information to families, and parents are advised to first contact their school district with any questions. All school-related activities, including graduation, should continue to abide by in-place social distancing guidelines. The pandemic has created an unprecedented situation for all of us, and Pennsylvanians have stepped up to meet that challenge. Parents and caregivers have found ways to turn their kitchens into classrooms. School staff and volunteers have packed millions of meals to send home to kids. Educators have come up with new ways to teach students from a distance. And business owners and community leaders have stepped up to fill in other gaps of support. I applaud all of you for coming together in the best interest of our students. You are helping to take a difficult situation and turn it into an opportunity to bring the community together. Finally, I know that when school is out, kids want to hang out with their friends and they want to go places. But it's important to remember that we're all in the midst of a pandemic. We need to keep our kids at home, and we need to stay home. It's the best way to stay safe. I want our kids back in the classroom as much as anyone. And the fastest way we can get to that point is by working together to stop the spread of COVID-19. So let's buckle down. Let's get this done. Thank you. Yeah, for the most part, what has been the case before, the closure is still the case, and that is local educational authorities make the rules. They have to abide by federal guidelines, and there are some, and there are some state guidelines, and they will continue to be in place. But ultimately, the local school districts make their own rules as to graduation requirements and classroom requirements, and so. Given the federal and state guidelines that remain in place or that have been waived, the local education authorities will continue to determine what standards exist for things like graduation, for independent educational programs, and for all sorts of things, for graduation requirements, for promotion into the next grade. Those things have been determined at the local level, and they will continue to be determined at the local level in this new and unprecedented age. Well, again, as I said, we're sending out the guidelines for how they might do that. We've worked on a continuity of education plan that includes things like distance learning. We've worked with 7 public broadcasting stations, public stations, to bring education programs into the home. We're working with schools to provide, I think we have $11 million that we have repurposed to support school districts who need financial help for things like laptops. Or to actually do printed material in areas where the broadband doesn't exist or is not robust enough. So the Department of Education will continue to support the educational enterprise throughout the state, including in this new unprecedented era that we're in right now, where we have to do more things from a distance, and we need new technologies. The state is helping each and every local school district and the intermediate units as we go through this period. Yeah, and that's what I said. There's $11 million that we have repurposed to help school districts who need specific things, and that will vary across the Commonwealth. But the Department of Education stands ready to support financially and any other way we can the efforts of school districts to make sure there is a continuity of education throughout this period when the buildings themselves are closed. Yeah, the class of 2020, first of all, congratulations. And second of all, we all live in very interesting times. We will, none of us, including the class of 2020, will forget what we went through. The country has been through all kinds of things before that have affected the educational programs at every level, but I'm not sure that the United States has ever faced this. So in one way, you have gotten a very unique life lesson, and in another way, the communities surrounding you, the state, federal, and the local levels, have rallied to make sure that in this unprecedented time, that you are getting what we need you to get, the education we need you to get. Yeah, that the first of all, graduation as opposed to the ceremony commencement, graduation has not been affected by this. Schools will still do what they need to do to make sure students graduate. As to the ceremonies, the guidelines are out there in terms of social distancing and all those things, the stay-at-home orders. Those are the things that are going to affect exactly how different schools around the state recognize the graduation. The graduation stays in place. How schools choose to celebrate that will depend on how they make that choice, how they decide. But again, in line with the guidelines that exist throughout the state for all of us in terms of getting together and exercising social distance. Well, yeah, we're continuing to support, and we'll continue to find new ways to support schools and all organizations, including food banks that are trying to fill in the food security needs of the Commonwealth citizens. So we'll continue to support that effort. And as I said, in terms of the educational enterprise, we have come up with about $11 million so far to help school districts who need additional resources and additional financial support to promote the continuity of education plans that each of them have in place. We haven't decided that yet. That's a good question. Licensed daycare facilities, the small ones, basically the private. You're talking about private licensed daycare. The smaller ones basically are making their own decisions. I think that's 4 or 5 or less children. The larger ones have been closed by the Department of Human Services, except in the cases where they serve the needs of essential workers like healthcare workers and other essential workers. In those cases, they have been granted a waiver.